and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Skin of the Game. If you're here, chances are you like talking sport, and we're glad you're doing it here with us. Listen, no matter the game, I can promise you at the very end of the day, I am at least a student of all of them. And listen, glad to have you in tonight. Glad to do some things here. If you're checking us out through the YouTube stream on Huddle Up or on Sertoba Media, thanks for doing that. On any of the socials, thanks for doing that. On the Student of the Game Twitch, thanks for doing that. Or if you're doing it on demand on any one of your podcatchers, just as grateful all the same. And hey, maybe you don't think I'm all that handsome. Maybe that's the issue. I don't know. I think there's a certain irony that I'm wearing my Aaron Evans hat with my Aaron Evans painting on my back, while behind me you won't catch that if you're listening to it on the podcatchers. But that is what it is. And listen, I mean, I'm going to get right into this. The big topic of the weekend. I mean, obviously the divisional playoffs for the NFL. Listen, I know there's some other stuff that may not make the show. I'm probably not going to touch on the Milwaukee Bucks firing their coach that was 30-13 and now bringing in Doc Rivers. Because, you know, when I'm replacing a coach that is allegedly being fired for internal issues, I bring in Doc Rivers. I'm sure we'll talk about that next week. Maybe I can get time from Matthew Muehlheisen of the Huddle Up podcast to talk about that. But enough about Philly stuff for the moment, other than reminding the world that Joel Embiid is good at basketball, scoring 70 points the other night, along with other, what was it, like 8 other NBA players having amazing nights on the anniversary of Kobe's 82-point game. I digress. But we all know that the top game of the divisional playoff was going to be Buffalo and Kansas City. I don't care that they're in divisions that are on the opposite ends of the country. I mean, you know, there's no such thing as an NFL Central anymore, so Kansas City's the West. I get it. But going into that game, there are two things that I'm hearing that aren't really a definition of what happened in the football game. Everyone's banging on Josh Allen, and one could put Bass, the kicker, in there as well. And everyone's hyping up Patrick Mahomes II. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying you can't criticize some elements of what Josh Allen did in the game. I'm not here to take that away from any fan. After all, at the end of the day, going after or supporting a quarterback is the, let's just say, the path of least resistance, so I'm not insulting anybody. However, for my brethren in the lamestream media, there's a certain element here that I feel like is getting completely overlooked, except for by one dude. Only one other person have I heard bring this up in analysis of that football game, which, by the way, listen, at the end of the day, I get the concept that it's more than the kicker that decided the game. Heck, I even kind of believe in it. You know, the Chiefs with the fumble through the back of the end zone, and everybody's whining and crying, oh, that's too harsh on the offense. The rules already benefit the offense in so many ways that we have rules that are named after quarterbacks in the NFL, but that we'll save that conversation for a little bit later. Where I sit, the kicker isn't the biggest problem. And it's not even the Bills' run game, I think, or derivation from it, as allegedly linked to Josh Allen, or even the dropping of the pass by Stephon Diggs. That probably also isn't getting enough press, but I'm sure it'll come up a lot in the offseason should the Bills somehow find a way to get around that contract and part ways with the people in question. Why is nobody talking about, other than Andrew Whitworth on the Rich Eisen podcast? Why is nobody else talking at any real length about the Chiefs running the football? Listen, I know it's very easy to be critical of Patrick Mahomes II throwing, air quotes, only 215 yards. That's still 9.3 a play. That's listen, by NFL standards, that's pretty good. That's beyond pretty good. That's awesome, right? The 17 for 23, by the way, while we're having that conversation, excellent percentage. No one's beefing at that. But why are we not talking more about 146 yards on the ground by the Chiefs. I get it. Isaiah Pacheco didn't break the 100-yard mark and had a 29-yard carry. And, that makes it seem a little less illustrious, I suppose. But the fact that a team coached by Andy Reid is gashing fools in a playoff game on the ground needs to be a lot more fascinating, right? I'm listening to Nick Wright whine and bleed and complain, oh, history. Oh, the Chiefs are so great in history. Oh, if you're so fond of history and you want to throw so many props at Patrick Lavon Mahomes II, and rightly so, I get it. He's in line and on a trending path to be over and above the new GOAT in a way that I will never argue, just like I have questions about Thomas Edward Patrick Beaver Brady being the GOAT in the eyes of many, right? That's a separate episode too, by the way. But why are we not talking about Andy Reid putting together this running performance for out-coaching Sean McDermott in a way that really the Bills were kind of helpless to stop in a way that wasn't their fault? Listen, the Bills had been getting gashed on the defensive roster since London against the Jaguars, right? They were losing fools left and right during that game. And one could argue it's a big reason as to why the Jags eventually prevailed in London. But I'm listen, this is an episode of the Duval Dive with Travis Holmes. Bing! So I'm not concentrating on that game so much. I do that to set the table to talk about how long and how much the Bills have been dealing with defensive injuries, right? This is what made it so that the offensive side had to be like, listen, Josh, you can't afford to make as many mistakes right now. We can't bail you out. And then they got a more conservative game plan. They got the run game more involved, as they had been allegedly drafting to do, right? I get it that Josh Allen led the team in rushing with 72 yards, but it's not like James Cook didn't pull his weight, getting 61 of his own. Granted, 61 yards on 18 carries. Not great, Bob. But when the Chiefs, as a defensive team, start to lock in on what you're doing, they're going to get a few stops. It's not like it was an awful game plan. Let's remember, they scored 24 points. It's not like they were devoid of points. It's not like they didn't move the ball. Granted, they just did it at gradual clips, right? 4.8 yards of play is not, I'm not going to go full, not great, Bob, but, it's certainly, the Chiefs, for all intents and purposes, gained twice as many yards per play. Cool. I ain't mad about that. Well, I should say Patrick Lavon Mahomes II to Josh Allen, right? But Andy Reid's plan of attacking the Bills with the run, fascinatingly proficient on many times on this and other shows. I've talked about the defensive tackle core of the Buffalo Bills being among the underrated in the league. So with that in mind, typically, all things being equal, you don't run the football. But then here comes Andy Reid. A dude, by the way, in his time with the Eagles, when he was regularly making it to NFC championships, everybody seems to have forgotten that at some point somehow, whatever. He had a player on his squad, Brian Westbrook. No, not Russell Westbrook. That's the dude in the NBA that can't win a championship. Okay? It's about the situation where Andy Reid's biggest kryptonite for the Eagles with Brian Westbrook, a guy who was regularly a Pro Bowl running back. Granted, fullback still existed back then in the NFL. Maybe you guys remember that. I don't know. It's a joke, obviously. As a Niner fan, I have Kyle Juszczyk, so I'm reminded regularly that that's a position, right? But 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, 4th and short, 3rd and short used to be the bane of that Eagles team existence because they could not handle trying to run the ball. And God help you if it happened to be short yardage, so none of a pass couldn't really happen. It wasn't practical. Donovan McNabb in that day, right? A quarterback who's trying to get out of the habit of running the football. Brian Westbrook, who, a good comparison, Alvin Kamara. But they couldn't run the football. Fast forward to this past weekend when you have potential GOAT Patrick Lavon Mahomes II at quarterback, and what do? You run for 146 yards. But Kyle, Patrick Lavon Mahomes II still got a lot of yardage and found Travis Michael Kelce for 2 touchdowns. And yeah, it's something. Whine about Taylor Swift somewhere else. I was too busy watching Jason Daniel Kelce have the greatest retirement party of his damn life up there celebrating shirtless by the press box. It's or the club seat, whatever you want to call it. And I know a lot of people are going to bring up Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He had 2 catches for 62 yards. Huge contribution late in the game. What the hell do you think set that up? How did we get there? Exactly. Might it have been a portion of the offense that ran more plays than the passing game did? They ran the ball 24 times. They had 6.1 a carry. And say what you will about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but his 2 carries for 31 yards, kind of a big deal. Granted, one of them was for 28, the other was for 3. Okay, cool. I'm not mad at it. Isaiah Pacheco, who has been relatively on the shelf throughout the regular season, shows up in big fashion under a coach that used to be able to not handle running the football. The Chiefs have a lot of guys at wide receiver you aren't necessarily fond of. Like we mentioned, MVS there, who had a relatively quiet season overall, right? We don't need to get into Mecole Hardman and all that situation such as that was. Rashee Rice, out of SMU doing his thing. By the way, got to cover him while covering UCF for the Black and Gold Banneret. Bing! Definitely a talented guy. But the reason he's getting his big numbers has more to do with Patrick Lavon Mahomes II and the rest of the receiver corps struggling than it is about how great he is. But still an awesome guy. Like, listen, I wrote an article during the Super Bowl last year, leading into the Super Bowl, I should say last year, talking about 2 corners at the 5th and 7th round picks, right, who were actually getting starting minutes and played significant playoff snaps, got stats for interceptions, and oh, by the way, did some things in that Super Bowl victory over the Eagles, right? Where else have we seen Andy Reid not have good receivers? Until he got Terrell Owens, at least anyway, right? Everyone forgot Fred X. Everyone forgot Todd Pinkston, or as he was regularly referred to by members of the lamestream media, in particular, Michael Irvin, Todd Stinkston, right? That was a thing, y'all. Andy Reid having a quarterback that's a leader, having receivers that aren't, is nothing new. Watching him rely on that while having a good defense on the other side, guess what? You have the makings of similarities between that and his Eagles teams, right? The Super Bowl team in particular, minus Terrell Owens, right? Some of these NFC Conference Championship teams, right? The 4th and 20 conversion team, right? But now the Bills are so injured at linebacker, they start throwing in 3 tight end sets. They start running all over the Bills. And everyone's like, oh, Travis Kelce looking like the Travis Kelce of old. And listen, hey, the sparks of having, a young pop star in Taylor Swift cheering for you in the club seats may help. Having your entire family, including your wild, drunk-ass brother up there cheering for you may help. They weren't at home, but maybe those are sort of things that help make it home for Travis Michael Kelce. Who knows? But you know what else is a thing? Play action passing. And if Andy Reid doesn't dial up a game plan or they run it 24 times with that much success, we don't see that. We don't see those 2 Travis Michael Kelce touchdowns. We don't see those 2 Marquez Valdez-Scantling touchdowns. And nobody, except for Andrew Whitworth, is talking about it. All we want to do is talk about them pretty boys behind the offensive line. Cool story, bros. But can we remember that there's a bunch of fat guys, in particular the Kool-Aid man himself, the guy dressed in red on the Kansas City sideline, Andy Reid, Creed Humphrey, and that Chiefs offensive line that are all fantastic. And Isaiah Pacheco carrying the football, Clyde Edwards-Helaire carrying the football. And hey, let's give Patty Mahomes his credit. He did have a 24-yard run in there too. At the end of the day, that was the main thing that actually led to the Chiefs winning this football game. And no one else, for the most part, is talking about it. I don't know. Of course, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Anyways, let's switch to this. You know, I'm looking around at the Tampa Bay game and the Lions game such that it happened last week. If I told you that these teams passed for a combined 84 yards, you would have thought, well, you would have called HR and had me random drug tested, but yet here we are. I'm not going to go and full on say that I owe Baker Mayfield an apology, but if the Bucs are inclined to sign him to a 2 or 3 year contract a la Geno Smith, I ain't mad at him either. The only thing the Buccaneers have done wrong is appear in the playoff, got lucky enough to run into a struggling Eagles franchise. I say franchise and not football team because there's still plenty of talented dudes, even if Jason Daniel Kelce retires. By the way, if you missed the Huddle Up podcast, you'll know why, if you listen to it, that Jason Daniel Kelce is getting 3-name treatment as a Hall of Fame center for the Philadelphia Eagles. I said it. I don't care if the ballots are in already and he's not officially retired yet. In 5 years, listen, I'm going to have to try to make a trip to Canada to see that happen. But I digress. Jared Goff did what he did. He showed up enough. Jahmyr Gibbs did what he did. And David Montgomery in that group, again, ran the football, got a good balance on offense, and didn't turn the football over. Jared Goff once again shows the world that game manager should never be a slur upon a quarterback, especially when the other side has 2 turnovers. Now, granted, the Detroit Lions have seen it in their history watching Brett Favre do that sort of thing in the NFC North on a regular basis. But I'll say this to kind of get through this game quickly. Plenty of credit to the Bucs. I know I gave them basically no respect throughout the season. And then they beat the Eagles and they put out a better showing against the Lions than I could have imagined. But yeah, at the end of the day, you did still win the NFC South. And Buccaneers, you need to keep Mike Evans in that building. Because I don't care what you pay Baker Mayfield. If Mike Evans is gone, it just doesn't matter. As you build this contract that may potentially happen, that I voice that Baker Mayfield at least deserves consideration for, based on the precedent of one Geno Smith, I think that Mike Evans should be used as a bargaining chip to keep Baker Mayfield's contract down. I'm not up on my salary research. Perhaps I'll do more of that in the offseason here. But from where I sit, Mike Evans is going to be asking for a significant number. I know, groundbreaking-ish, me making that point. But for whatever Mike Evans asks for, I think it should be brought to Baker Mayfield in his contract that he might be presented for, extension. Hey, give some up to keep him in the room. Because one thing I think that Baker has learned is the guy that's on the other end of the pass he's throwing matters. Say what you will about Odell Beckham Jr. and the success he's finding with Lamar, Demetrius Jackson, and Zay Flowers on the other side of the field at receiver. And, listen, the chances of us talking about the Ravens a little later in this pod are pretty likely. I know that's a tight end reference, and I didn't say a tight end, but whatever. That pun's still going to hold on this show. This is what I do. Okay. But for me, at the end of the day, Baker Mayfield needs to have his contract controlled if he wants Mike Evans in the room. And I don't think there's a better way to leverage that. But let's talk about the winning side. The Lions may not have had their best game of the year, but survive and advance is a thing. And trust me, more on that later, sure enough. Right? I know he didn't have a 100-yard receiver, Jared Goff, but he didn't turn the ball over. This defense of the Detroit Lions was once again relentless. At day's end, who can blame Baker Mayfield for throwing 2 interceptions, considering the fact that he was sacked 4 times? Not great, Bob. And for once, I'm not hearing Aiden Hutchinson's name, but just one of those sacks. So, listen, I know Brian Branch got involved doing some things, getting in the backfield, even over and above his role in the contest as a safety, right? A rookie, I might add, by the way, making that big an impact in a playoff game, right? This is kind of a thing, right? Aiden Hutchinson, a second-year player. Brian Branch, a rookie safety. Jack Campbell is a linebacker, also another dude making a huge impact out of Iowa. Sam Laporta, the tight end, getting his licks in there, 9 catches for 65. Man, listen, I know we hear about youth a lot with the Packers and more on them later, but what Dan Campbell has done with this squad is not just admirable, it's inspirational. I know there were tweets out there in the past for certain other personalities that claimed that Dan Campbell had skipped the line and they had made it a political issue with Dan Campbell. And Lord knows if you watch him, I'm pretty sure he has some rather politically incorrect moments just with his presentation alone. But it doesn't matter when you bring results like that to a franchise that is a reeling like Detroit. I forgot Eminem watched football, and here he is running TikToks telling Stafford to lose the game in the wild card round. Yeah. But yeah, if you don't at least loosely appreciate what the Lions are doing right now, you're either a Packer fan, a Bear fan. Vikings fans don't matter. I'm kidding. Or you just precisely have no soul. Or you've had your kneecaps bitten off at some point and you're traumatized because Dan Campbell. I'll be honest. If somehow Dan Campbell and the Lions take care of the 49ers on Sunday, I'll be sad, but I won't be mad about it. Speaking of the 49ers, listen. It's funny how many people are running to the defense of Brock Purdy. I'm not angry at it, but as somebody who is a firm member of the Brock Purdy is not the MVP of the league club, I didn't have time to print out the card I'm carrying, right? He did enough to put together the drive that put the Niners ahead for what would eventually be the game-winning score, right? At day's end, Christian McCaffrey did his thing as well. Trent Williams is still healthy. Deebo Samuel, yeah, we're not still sure if he's going to be playing on Sunday, but he did get hurt this past week. And I know there's a lot of people that are worried about that. Listen, for me, I still maintain so long as Trent Williams is on the roster, there's a fighting chance. But I think the real guy that panicked was not Brock Purdy. I think the weather affected both quarterbacks in their performance. I don't think either quarterback had a particularly great day throwing the football, right? Now, surely Jordan Love had a bit better completion percentage, but I would ask that, or I would also submit that he was asked to do a touch less, right? Aaron Jones, by the way, excellent running back, something we haven't talked about for a running back that stays relatively healthy. And I'm comparing it to Sam Gatto, for example. Guys that miss time a lot. I'm sure there'll be Packer fans out there that could go off and name the list of running backs that had gotten hurt during the Rodgers and Favre eras Shouts to my guy Darrell Owens from Legacy Maker Sports, for example, who could probably, bring up names. I'm like, oh, I completely forgot about that dude. And I'm bringing up Darrell's name so I can stall and try to remember some of these guys beyond Sam Congato, but I digress. The guy I'm worried about is Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan. And it's something I didn't really notice until I saw Rob Stats Guerrera, a guy who I've had on this show a couple years back, help preview the Niners, fresh off of or into Trey Lance taking over the job, such as we might have been expecting it. Now, that didn't end up happening, but beyond the first two games because he got hurt. And listen, we don't need to relive the carousel was 2022 with the Niners quarterback position. Your stability, 49er fans, is coming in a 7th round pick, Mr. Irrelevant himself. That's still kind of mind-blowing, and I think that's why people are critical of Brock Purdy. But for my money, this Packer team is interesting to observe. We saw Matt LaFleur this year in a way that we didn't get to in the past with Aaron Charlie Rodgers, right? The way that Rodgers was alleged, and apparently has been confirmed to have, changed plays at the line. Jordan Love didn't do that. And who knew that Matt LaFleur can occasionally call some plays that are run well and do things. If you let the coach run his game plan, maybe it'll work. Crazy idea. I know. It's nuts. But to see that, the new challenge is going to be this, because all we hear about is, well, the Packers were so young. This is amazing they pulled this off. I would contend that a team that young really doesn't know they're in a position I don't want to say they don't belong there, because the Packers completely belong there. The only team that apparently didn't belong was the Dallas Cowboys. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. Now, I'll grant you, I wouldn't have thought they'd have been eliminated until this weekend, talking about it back in July and August. But hey, thank God for small favors. You're welcome, America, other than you people who are fans of America's team. However, the Packers' record against the 49ers in the playoffs might not be so great lately either. This is why I think this loss is good for Jordan Love. He knows he's good. He's learned he's good in the back half of this season. This is the kind of loss that takes you from good to great, where you make a mistake that is compared to a famous quarterback in your franchise. And listen, I maintain that Favre is the 3rd best quarterback in for the Packers off time, behind Aaron Rodgers and Bart Starr. What? Y'all forgot he existed? There's this guy Lombardi. Yeah, he had a quarterback. That's the dude's name. I know. History. It's a thing. And I'm sure there'll be people like, but Brad Favre, hey, listen. I know Starr didn't lead the league in interceptions. Just throwing that out there, guys. Okay? Thanks. Oh, and by the way, I believe holds the record in career interceptions among quarterbacks in the NFL. Anyways, enough about that. But when you're Jordan Love and you're getting reminded of having a Favrean moment, to have your name mentioned in context with somebody who's an all-time great with your franchise, alleged all-time great for your franchise, or we'll say Super Bowl winner in the franchise, puts your mind in a space where you're getting to that bar. Now LaFleur only has to tap that to get them to go further. And oh, by the way, the Lions playing with house money right now is awesome. Next year, I haven't looked at the schedule yet. Obviously, the official schedule isn't out. I haven't looked at what teams are next in the rotation, but I do know this. They'll have a first place schedule. But Kyle, that doesn't matter. Listen, here's what I'm telling you. There'll be at least 2 games where they'll be playing other first place members from 2023 on their schedule, right? Potential 49ers game on the regular season now. By the way, hell of a rematch, right? Be the most anticipated Niners-Lions game since Jim Schwartz and Jim Harbaugh, right? The Shakedown Part 2, where they got that whole scuffle after the game because Jim Harbaugh shook his hand too hard. Pansy. I said it, Jim Schwartz. Come at me, bro. But that's one option, right? Lions could find themselves with the Niners on the schedule in the regular season now. Okay, the Bucs aren't that intimidating, but they'll be wanting revenge, right? At this point, okay, so it's the Cowboys. Never mind. Maybe first place schedules don't matter. But no, but I say all that to say, when you are following up a successful year, you get the target on your back, you get a little bit of bump potentially in the difficulty of your schedule, on and on and on. And in a division in the NFC North that is often competitive, right? Like I mean, I could talk about how I thought it was going to be a one-game difference coming down to the wire myself, but the punchline is, this year it was a 3-game difference. I don't expect a 3-game difference in the NFC North in the coming year. Guys got to remain healthy. Guys got to remain in the building, which I think Dan Campbell will pull off. This is going to be upcoming. Really is going to be the real test for Dan Campbell for all the success he's had. This is the punchline I'm getting to. The real challenge is going to try to get this team to get just a little bit better in the places they need to polish to challenge a San Francisco or a Baltimore. And I'm not here to say that they can't challenge San Francisco. Don't take it like that. But to put them in a position to not be underdogs the way that they are. Vegas, by the way, take the Lions. Take the Lions with the points. Vegas has them way too damn low. But, or at least they did when they last heard it. Like, it was at least a touchdown. It's something ridiculous. But maintaining the success of the franchise is where the real challenge is going to come. But the Lions have drafted and have younger guys, as well as moving things along. They've groomed guys. They just need to continue to do that. I say that like it's simple, but that'll be the challenge that Dan Campbell has. Anyways, Ravens and Texans, listen, this one's real easy. The smart people won't pick Christian McCaffrey, who affects 3 elements of a football game: in the run game, in the protection of the quarterback in the passing game, and also as a receiver in the passing game. The lamestream media will be lazy and pick a quarterback again because they don't watch film. They only focus on quarterbacks. Hell, I spent the first however long talking about how wrong they are, focusing on the quarterbacks in the Buffalo and Chiefs game, right? But if the lamestream media is going to repeat that sin, at the very least, Lamar Demetrius Jackson has a pretty damn flawless case to prevent them from making the same mistake that they have in the past. No, I don't think Patrick LaVon Mahomes II was the MVP last year. Not saying he wasn't great. Not saying he didn't make a case. But you're going to try to tell me that Saquon Barkley didn't have more to do with that Giants team in the same way that Christian McCaffrey had more to do with the 49ers. That being said, listen. L-Jack finding Isaiah Likely, making Zay Flowers amazing, keeping Odell Beckham Jr. relatively youthful in the new passing scheme. I get it. And this isn't a slight on Lamar Demetrius Jackson. This is more me sliding the franchise of the Baltimore Ravens. The reason why you're seeing him successful now in a way that it wasn't before, by the way, is they didn't move to a different offensive coordinator sooner. They didn't move off of Greg Roman sooner. As many people, smart people I know, shouts to my guy Brandon Howard, for example, for CBS, they tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. You make the move, lo and behold, success. When you got a guy like a Harbaugh at the helm, things can improve. I have to think the Ravens' success or why the Spanos clan owning the Chargers eventually was going to cut the check for Jim Harbaugh because they had to outbid Michigan. And listen, if anybody's paying any attention right now to what college boosters are doing right now, that could not have been a cheap auction. Okay. I'm just throwing that out there. By the way, shouts to Michigan. You had a great run with Jim Harbaugh. I think you have one more year to be great. And then you got to see what this next administration will do for you with no Jim Harbaugh there. Because at the very least, a Harbaugh builds a culture. Who's got it better than us? Nobody. Isn't just some crazy thing you say at the start of a podcast to commemorate your homerism for a Michigan fan. Homer. No. It's something that you use to build a family feeling, like Jack Harbaugh did. Their father, by the way, America's grandpa, right? John and Jim Harbaugh take that same feeling, build a culture around it. John Harbaugh coached defensive backs, also coached running backs and tight ends, also coached special teams. He's not a defensive guy or an offensive guy I'm not saying he's incapable of chalk talk, but he's not the genius. He's not a Sean McVay, an Andy Reid, a Bill Belichick type in reputation. You can allege Jim Harbaugh an offensive specialist as a former NFL quarterback, a former Chargers quarterback, as it would fall. But Jim Harbaugh's there to show you who's got it better than you. Nobody. And if the Chargers believe that, they might actually be dangerous. I'm not here to tell you they're going to dethrone Patrick LaVon Mahomes II. That's not what I'm here for. But you better bet in a division that now features Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, and, Antonio Pierce is a great story, but raise your hand if you have coached in a Super Bowl. Ooh, sorry, Antonio, that's a problem. You played in one. That's cool. But, yeah, man, let's just say the Raiders are a project in the AFC West, and we'll leave it at that. But can you imagine what will Nick Wright do if the Chargers do find success immediately and challenge the Chiefs for the division? Hell, if they win a regular season game, the next day, anything with Nick Wright is going to be must-see TV. I'll throw that out there. Anyways, I just had to throw that out there too. By the way, I'm going to throw this out there too, and we could laugh at me next week when I'm confirmed wrong. But is anybody else having trouble taking Bill Belichick in Atlanta seriously? I know. 2 interviews. It's air quotes probably going to happen, but is he really that hard up to find the next place to go? The Titans got the Bengals former OC. I like that move. The Titans might actually win 7 games in the AFC South coming up. Like, Titans fans got so offended when I made that comment on Twitter, like, oh, you Jags fan, this, that. First of all, I cover the Jacksonville Jaguars for the Jaguar Report, bing, as a 49ers fan. All I tried to tell you is that your Titans and the Texans were going to win about the same amount of games. And I got that way wrong because the Texans had a great year. And that's my punchline to wrap up the Ravens-Texans game. The Texans had a great year. I don't think there's anything to add to it. Was DeMeco Ryans my coach of the year? No, but I get why he's a candidate. Was C.J. Stroud everybody's rookie of the year? If he's not, you're doing it wrong. Was Will Anderson Jr. also a student of the game defensive rookie of the year? You bet your entire rear end. And rightly so. Like, that draft class did amazing things, and the first place schedule concept worries me for them much more than the Detroit Lions, right? You'll probably supplant the AFC South next year. I'll commit to that harder once we actually see the draft and the offseason moves. And come back to me in June or July. Well, not July. I'll be in Greece, but August, right? We'll have that conversation then, and I can elaborate my thoughts. But right now, if you were going to say, who do you think is going to come back? I think that the Texans might be the most likely team to repeat as a division champion. Yes, even more than the Chiefs. That's Jim Harbaugh's fault. Sorry. But the first place AFC teams, right? The Baltimore Ravens, mentioned the Chiefs earlier, the Bills, such as they are, which, by the way, I know it's alleged that their window is closed. I'm not there. If they can find a way to do something about their defensive cap situation, they'll be in a good state. Unfortunately, they chased after aging dudes, and that will hurt their ability moving forward. You now have guys that are another year older and are coming off of injury on that defense from this year. That's going to be a problem, right? But that all being said, Josh Allen doesn't suck now, and they have a receiver core that's good enough. They have an improved running game. It's not like they're just going to vanish into thin air and be an absolute non-factor. I just don't see that happen in the Bills. But I'm still... Listen, and I know that, like I mentioned loosely Von Miller's contract. I think they have enough guys that can make a difference to it's less really, here's what it is. It's less about the Bills coming down as who's going to replace them. Do you believe in the Dolphins yet? Now, granted, if they have a good defensive draft, we'll have that conversation. If they have a good offensive line draft, we'll have that conversation. Aaron Charles Rodgers is not playing 17 full games in the regular season, not with that offensive line. More than happy to give him his credit for making it through an entire season healthy, just like Lamar Demetrius Jackson did this year. I mean, the sweet irony is delicious. I've mentioned this already on this podcast, so I'm not going to harp on it as the guy who went into contract negotiations working against him because of his injury potential, and now being the one quarterback in his division that stayed healthy the damn year. That's just brilliant. But if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy the entire season next year, I'd be amazed. So that takes care of the Jets. You're trying to tell me you believe that much in the Patriots coming back to life with Gerard Mayo as coach? I'm not. And I'm not mad that he's getting the opportunity to go. Don't get it twisted. I just think that's a tough ask of even a great coach. And it would fit that a former player and inside the house guy would get that job just to buy some goodwill from the Boston media. So, yeah, who's going to supplant the Bills, right? I picked them to win this division. I picked them to do it by one game. They did it by a tiebreak. Okay, so it was even closer than I thought. Cool. They still won the damn thing. And I don't see anybody knocking them off of the AFC East. I don't see it. So anyways, I've waxed poetic about that whole scenario. How about we actually talk about the upcoming games now? The games that provide the teams that will be the champion potentially. The game that determines the game, if you will. Conference Championship Sunday. The NFL should really get like the guy that does the monster truck shows there locally. You've heard the kind of ads on the radio. Sunday. It's Conference Championship Sunday for the NFL. Like, come on, that would be money. That's a thing they need to do. Anyways, Conference Championship Sunday. Let's get into it. For me, listen, let's do the AFC first. And I know Chiefs fans, and specifically the nation's biggest homer, Nick Wright, who I actually like, by the way. I keep talking trash on him as a Chiefs fan. I'm not here to say he's a bad football analyst. I'm just here to say he needs to stick to basketball in a lot of cases because his Chiefs glasses are pretty heavy. I agree with all those points about Patrick LeVon Mahomes II, however, being a potential a GOAT candidate. I don't think it's close. I mean, heck, if Mahomes retired today, first ballot Hall of Famer, and I don't think it's arguable. I get it. Get it. However, the Ravens are a far more complete team. The Ravens don't have a shattered defense, as do the Dolphins, as did the Bills in that playoff game. Andy Reid's not going to come out with 3 tight end sets and be successful running the football against the Baltimore Ravens. I don't see it. As far as I know, Kyle Hamilton is still playing at safety. That'll still be a thing that's amazing in their defensive front in Baltimore. Listen, I know it's not Ray Lewis and T. Sizzle, but it's still pretty damn good. And for every little bit, they're not quite as good as that group. Quote, the Ravens never score. Man, I'll take Lamar Demetrius Jackson over Trent Dilfer any day of the week. That being said, I think this is going to be a situation where the Chiefs, as a defense-first team now, no disrespect to Patrick LeVon Mahomes II, I'm speaking to the status of the roster for Kansas City, right? They shaved a bit off the offense, knowing that Patrick LeVon Mahomes II can handle it, and they built up the defense. It's a fine strategy for me. It's a very Andy Reid thing to do. Chris Jones for president, I guess, if you like that kind of guy. And J.J. Watt happens to be retired, so there's that. But for my money, the Ravens are more complete, will likely be the most complete. No, the Ravens are the most complete offense the Chiefs will face in the postseason, period, point blank, end of damn story. It'll be the most complete team that they face. But Kyle, the Dolphins' offense is a music. Yeah, I'm sure they are, but their O-line isn't of the highest quality, and goodness only knows how limited Waddle and Tyreek Hill were when they played. And not to mention, I don't believe the running back core was at full strength for Miami either. Who cares? Like, whatever. I didn't watch the thing, or at least all of it. It was on Peacock. I was boycotting. There you go. Okay. But the Ravens are complete in my mind on both sides of the ball. I'm not here to tell you that Patrick LeVon Mahomes II won't make it close. I'm not here to tell you that I think the 3.5 point spread that I last heard is a bad number. Really, the correct answer is to bet the over on this damn thing. Don't go for the money line there. That's going to hurt you, in my opinion. I'm no degenerate. I ask EJ Christian about that sort of thing. Bing! And granted, he still loses money, but I digress. For me, I think the Ravens are just too complete for what the Chiefs are bringing to the party this year. I am not saying either team is a bad team on the AFC side. Matter of fact, I'll make this statement. I've made it 3 other places, including on 1540 The Fan, the Mark Moses show. I believe the winner of the AFC Championship game is your eventual Super Bowl winner. But Kyle, you're a 49er fan. I said what I said. The 49ers not blowing either of these teams out. And the Ravens have already done what they've done to San Francisco. The Chiefs, I think it'll be a close game again, just like the last time they played with Jimmy Garoppolo. But there'll be another 3rd and 17, 3rd and 21, whatever the hell it was. And Patrick LeVon Mahomes II will blow the game open late and break the Niners' hearts again. It's going to be, listen, maybe I'm just mentally preparing myself. Kind of like, Cowboys fans and Eagles fans have been doing for the past however long, there's another set of fans that was preparing themselves for disappointment. The Bucks, I hope. That's terribly accurate. Anyways, yeah, I got the Ravens there. I think they're too complete. Now, the more interesting game, the night game, and rightly so, scheduled for the primetime portion of your Sunday night. The Lions and the Niners at Santa Clara there, Levi Stadium. Running on the Lions is going to be a touch more difficult than anybody else they've tried to. Like, for example, I don't expect Christian McCaffrey to have a significantly big running day. If he gets to 100 against the Lions, I will be surprised. And it'll probably be on the strength of a big run broken off. A single play turning into a home run is probably the best case scenario for a running day for Christian McCaffrey. I also believe that Brock Purdy will be tested in a way that he hasn't been by a lot of other NFC teams, right? I think we're going to see a scenario where the critics will either be silenced or emboldened, and there will not be a middle ground. I think Man Campbell is going to try to bite some kneecaps off. I think Penei Sewell is going to try to do their best to protect their game manager. But I scoff at Goff at the end of the day and believe that Brock Purdy can make more big plays, regardless of Deebo Samuel's existence. I have the Niners, but I would bet the Lions. I think they're getting entirely too many points considering the Niners style of play. And let's be clear, the Lions style of play too. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the big weapon there, much like Christian McCaffrey is going to be the big weapon, has been the big weapon for the 49ers, right? I loved when the Lions drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, and Lions fans are like, no, we don't need another. Shut up. Best available, fools. That's how you do it at that level when you're trying to make the splash that you need to as a team that has flirted with winless seasons more often than the Browns. The only difference is the Browns actually achieved it. I mean, was it the 70s, the 60s? I forget the number now. But I believe the Lions have toppled the Niners before in ancient history. Or maybe it was 91. I was thinking, yeah, maybe I have that wrong. Punchline's this. I have the Niners overall just because they have so much everywhere. That's not to say that the Lions are limited. Besides, for my Game of Thrones fans out there, one could argue that the Niners have the look of the Gold Cloaks. And that Man Campbell is the kind of guy that leads a rebellion, which he certainly has. Starting last year, by the way, eliminating the Packers in Aaron Charlotte Rodgers' final year as a Packer. I think that counts. Dude looks like Torben Giantsbane. There you go, Game of Thrones fans. But if you want a more modern reference, talk about a movie that came out in the 70s. Star Wars. Yeah, I know. Disney bought them everything. Re-releases, Mandalorian, Baby Yoda, yada, yada, yada. But if there's a team rife for upset, it's the 49ers. And I don't think it's Brock Purdy's fault. I don't think it's Christian McCaffrey's fault, certainly. And last I saw in the injury report, Trent Williams is fine. I think this is going to be Kyle Shanahan playing too conservative. I think if you have a scenario where the Lions, you have your foot on the Lions' throat, and you're a gladiator in this battle, you need to make sure you stomp on the throat in question. Otherwise, the lion will eat you like a Christian in ancient Rome. Something historical reference. But for my money, if there's a guy that's going to topple and take advantage of a dude that plays overly conservative, one would even argue afraid at times, it's a dude that's going to bite your kneecaps like Man Campbell. Being said, I still have the 49ers. Anyways, that all being said, I think I've waxed poetic here enough on this week's edition. Hey, I didn't have a guest, so you had just me. So, hey, you got almost an hour of it. I hope that's enough for you. And listen, maybe I can get somebody to talk some damn NBA for me next week because I'm not bringing up the Pro Bowl on the show. I will, of course, wrap up Conference Championship Sunday. Hopefully, I'm not crying into whatever frosty adult beverage I have in front of me. And perhaps I can have a guest that will help perform some therapy for me, with me, or mock the hell out of me. One of the two would be nice. But, of course, an honor, joy, and privilege to have you all aboard today's adventure, if you're listening on the podcast. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as a student of the game, and check out my writing with the 3-point conversion, the black and gold banneret, as well as Jaguar Report of Fan Nation on SI. And then also check out my work covering the Orlando Magic for A7BN Sports as well. A lot of work and action I'm doing there locally. And listen, friends, an honor, joy, and privilege to do the thing with you tonight. Thanks for checking in. But until next time, everyone, class dismissed.